Gerald Simmons was a quiet man, ex-Marine, widower. He kept to himself in the peaceful neighborhood of Brookwood Trails. But one Tuesday morning, a letter showed up on his porch, a $150 fine for unauthorized lawn decor. It was a miniature flagpole in memory of his late wife. That's it. He walked to the HOA office politely, thinking it must be a mistake, but he was met with smirks. "This isn't Arlington, sir," the chairwoman sneered. Something shifted inside him. He saluted her with the calm of a soldier and walked away. But the war had begun. Within 2 weeks, he received 4 more citations, one for using non-compliant grass seed, one for parking 3 inches over the driveway line, one for having too many wind chimes. They even installed a security camera facing his house. Gerald didn't yell. He documented every visit, took photos, printed each violation. Neighbors whispered. Some pitied him. Others were scared. But one thing was clear. Brookwood's HOA was targeting him, and he wasn't the only one. An elderly black couple down the street had already sold their home quietly. A Latino family's BBQ got shut down due to fire code. This was bigger than his flagpole. This was discrimination, polite, polished, and absolutely real. Gerald stood up at the quarterly HOA meeting, trembling hands. Not from fear, from anger. He had binders full of evidence. Some of you know what's happening here. Others choose not to see it. He clicked a remote. Slide after slide showed fines disproportionately issued to minorities. Video clips showed board members laughing during random inspections. He ended with a photo, his wife in uniform, standing next to their flagpole before cancer stole her. The room went silent. And then the chairwoman laughed. "This isn't a courtroom, Mr. Simmons." But that's when Gerald dropped the lawsuit. Certainly. Here's an expanded 1,000-word version of Part 5, When the News Crew Arrived. From the War Against the HOA, Part 5, When the News Crew Arrived, expanded to 1,000 words. Gerald knew going up against the HOA wasn't just about codes and fines anymore. It was about dignity. He was too seasoned to believe that truth alone would win battles. He needed something louder, sharper, unignorable. He needed a platform. So he picked up the phone and called Nia Simmons, a local journalist he'd seen once on the evening news. Her segment on gentrification had stirred something in him. She was young, fierce, and unafraid. And black. He didn't know why that last part mattered, maybe because she might get it in a way others couldn't. When Nia answered, her voice was brisk and professional. "Channel 8 News, Simmons speaking." Gerald cleared his throat. "You don't know me, ma'am, but my name is Gerald Simmons. No relation, but I've got a story, not just about me. About a neighborhood, about a system. You might want to hear this." There was a pause on the line. She'd heard claims like that before: angry neighbors, conspiracy theories, people who confused property disputes with oppression. But something in his voice, something grounded, made her say, "I'm listening." 2 days later, Nia arrived at Gerald's home with her cameraman, a quiet guy named Jay who wore thick glasses and carried a camera like it was a weapon. Gerald had turned his living room into a command center. Stacks of files, photos, timestamps, drone footage, even HOA bylaws marked with tabs and sticky notes. There were binders labeled by violation type: parking, decor, landscaping, noise, and inside each were patterns, not guesses, not speculation. Data.nia flipped through them with growing disbelief. "All these citations are just from this year?" she asked. Gerald nodded. "Look closer, the names, the zip codes, the dates." She did. And what emerged wasn't just a list of petty infractions, it was a map of targeted harassment. Every person fined for lawn height or fence color had a last name that wasn't Smith or Johnson. People fined for birthday banners or wind chimes were immigrants, minorities, or part of marginalized communities. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a strategy. "Jesus," she whispered. "My wife died 2 years ago," Gerald said quietly. "We planted that flagpole together. She served 20 years in the Navy. I just wanted to remember her." Nia looked at him. "I'm not just running this story, I'm running it hard." 1 week later, the special aired. Prime time. A bold title flashed across the screen: Brookwood or Backwards. The opening shot was a slow pan of Brookwood Trails, quiet, tree-lined streets, rows of manicured lawns, and pastel-painted homes with shutters that all looked a little too similar. Then came the stories. Nia stood in front of the HOA office. Behind these walls, rules were weaponized. And what started as community guidelines became a tool of exclusion. Gerald appeared on screen, his voice steady. "I didn't want a fight. I just wanted to grieve in peace." A Latina mother, eyes red from crying, spoke next. "They fined us for having our daughter's quinceañera in the backyard. Said it was unauthorized assembly, but the neighbor had 20 people over last month for a Super Bowl party. No fine." A disabled veteran, sitting in a wheelchair, showed a $300 fine for mechanical obstruction. "It was his modified van. They told me to park it somewhere else. Said it was an eyesore." A Muslim teacher held up a citation. "They said our garden lights violated illumination rules. But our neighbor had Christmas lights up for 3 months. They didn't get a thing." The footage was damning. Then came the receipts. WhatsApp screenshots leaked from the former HOA assistant. Comments like, "Keep an eye on the new ones. They love flags and backyard parties. Let's nip it early. We're not turning this place into a melting pot." One board member even joked, "Brookwood should stay. **, Brook White." And someone replied with a laughing emoji. Nia's voiceover cut back in. This wasn't about grass height. It was about gatekeeping. The fallout was immediate. The segment went viral. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Reddit. #BROKWOOD backwards was trending within hours. News outlets from other states picked it up. Civil rights attorneys started making calls. A local law firm offered to represent affected residents pro bono. The HOA tried to respond the next day. A hastily written statement appeared on their website, claiming that all actions were in line with HOA guidelines and applied equally. But it was too late. The internet wasn't buying it. And neither were the people. Nia showed up at the HOA office for a follow-up interview. Chairwoman Linda Hargrave sat stiffly behind a desk, flanked by 2 silent board members. Her voice was cool, rehearsed. "We enforce rules to maintain community standards." Nia didn't blink. "Are those standards applied differently based on race or background?" "Absolutely not," Hargrave replied with a tight smile. Then Nia pulled out the screenshots. The quotes, the names, the numbers. Hargrave's face didn't change, but her eyes flickered. Just once. When the camera cut, she whispered, "You think one man is going to undo all we've built?" Nia stared her down. "No, but a whole neighborhood just might." That night, something happened that Gerald never expected. People started showing up. Not with pitchforks. With stories. They knocked on his door, left letters. Emails poured in. Neighbors he hadn't spoken to in years. Even those who once looked away when he walked by. "I'm sorry," one woman said. "I saw what they did to you. I didn't know how to help, but I want to now." A man in his 30s brought photos of his own citations. "They said my truck didn't fit the neighborhood image. I thought it was just me." A retired couple, black, gentle, and proud, said they'd sold their house last year after being fined 14 times in 3 months. "They wanted us out," the husband said. "We gave up." "But you," he looked at Gerald, voice trembling. "You stood your ground." Gerald listened to every story, wrote every name down. By the end of the week, a group of 27 neighbors signed a petition. They called for the complete dissolution of the current HOA board and demanded new elections. The HOA wasn't ready for this. Not for the cameras parked outside their office. Not for the pressure from civil rights groups. Not for the people they thought would always stay quiet. Because Brookwood Trails had changed. No longer a silent, sanitized suburb, now a movement, a neighborhood that had found its voice. And it all started with one man, one flagpole, and one journalist who decided to listen. 6 months had passed. 6 long months of motions, hearings, counterclaims, delays. And now finally, it came down to this day. Gerald sat quietly in the courtroom's front row. His shoulders straight, his face calm, but his eyes sharp as glass. He wore his old navy blazer, medals pinned to the left breast. Not for show, for truth. A silent reminder of what integrity looked like when institutions failed. On the bench was Judge Marcella Hightower, a black woman in her early 50s known for her no-nonsense demeanor and razor-precise rulings. She had read every page of evidence, heard every testimony, from victims to whistleblowers, to current and former HOA board members who stumbled over their own contradictions. The courtroom was packed. Press, activists, neighbors, who once whispered about Gerald behind closed windows now sat behind him, hands clasped, eyes full of hope and guilt and quiet resolve. The chairwoman of the HOA, Linda Hargrave, sat across the aisle, her posture rigid, her jaw tight. She wore a beige suit and a plastic smile that had cracked weeks ago. Her lawyer, a smug man in a navy pinstripe, kept whispering to her, but her eyes were far away. The room fell silent as the judge raised her gavel. I've reviewed the documents, listened to the arguments, and most importantly, I've listened to the people this case represents. She paused, scanning the courtroom. Asterisk. The HOA's actions were racially biased, targeted, and unlawful, she said clearly. Under the guise of policy, the board used enforcement as a tool of exclusion. What Mr. Simmons has revealed is not just misconduct, it is systemic abuse that has gone unchecked for years. A ripple of emotion surged through the room. She turned toward Gerald, asterisk, Mr. Simmons, you have not only defended your property and your rights, you've set a precedent. You've reminded this court that courage is not measured by rank or title, but by the willingness to stand alone when no one else will. She slammed the gavel once. The current HOA board is hereby dissolved. A temporary administrator will oversee the community until new elections are held, supervised by a third-party ethics committee. Asterisk cheers tried to break out, but Judge Hightower raised her hand. One more thing, she said. Asterisk, effective immediately. New anti-discrimination clauses will be written into Brookwood Trails bylaws. Enforcement policies must now be transparent, consistent, and subject to independent review. Violators will face federal scrutiny. Gasps, audible gasps. It was over. No, it was just beginning. Asterisk after the ruling. Reporters swarmed Gerald as he stepped into the sunlight. Microphones, cameras, questions. Asterisk. But he raised one hand gently. Asterisk. I appreciate your coverage, he said, his voice deep and steady. But I didn't do this for attention. I didn't do this for revenge. And I sure as hell didn't do this for a payout. Asterisk. A lawyer stepped forward with a folder, a proposed settlement check for $500,000 in damages, legal costs, and emotional distress. Gerald looked at it once, then closed the folder. Asterisk. I'm not here for a check, he said, locking eyes with the cameras. I'm here for change. Asterisk. He walked down the courthouse steps alone, but not really. Behind him, one by one, his neighbors followed. Asterisk. The same woman who once told him to remove his cluttered lawn decor now wiped a tear from her cheek and whispered, I was wrong, Gerald. The Muslim teacher from earlier hugged him gently. The disabled vet gave him a nod, a soldier's nod. Asterisk. Then something happened that no one expected. Asterisk. A group of neighborhood kids, organized by Nia Simmons, stepped forward. Each held a small flag hand-drawn with crayons. Some had hearts. Some had his name. One just said, Thank you, Mr. Simmons. And then they saluted. Dozens of adults joined them. Black, brown, white. All standing in the courthouse courtyard. All lifting a hand to their brow. Asterisk. Just like Gerald had once saluted his wife. Asterisk. Just like he had saluted a country that didn't always salute him back. Just like he did today. For a moment, he couldn't move. Asterisk. He felt her again, his wife standing beside him. Not in flesh, but in purpose, in spirit. In every little flag those kids held. In every changed heart behind him. Asterisk. Tears welled in his eyes, but they didn't fall. He just whispered, You see this, baby? We did it. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Gerald stood at the edge of his front lawn. Asterisk. The old flagpole was still there. Untouched now. No more fines. No more letters. Just a flag flapping gently in the wind. It wasn't flashy. Just hers. The one they bought together on their anniversary. Asterisk. Neighbors trickled in and out of his yard all night. Some brought food. Others brought flowers. Many just brought themselves and their stories. Asterisk. He didn't need a podium. His porch became the town hall. Asterisk. That night, Brookwood Trails wasn't a battleground anymore. It was a community finally won. Year later, Gerald sat in the front row at the community center. A new board was being sworn in, and guess who was elected chair? Nia Simmons. She stood at the podium and smiled. Asterisk. This neighborhood owes its peace to one man who refused to stay silent. She turned to him. Uncle D, this flag's for you. They raised a new flagpole in front of the center, the same design as his wife's, not just for memory, but as a warning to anyone who ever again